"How you cry because you're hungry toot?" asked the little beggar girl. Michael Johnson couldn't stop crying as he pressed his trembling hands against his face. The dark grey suit he always wore to impress clients now felt unbearably heavy on his hunched shoulders. 3 days without food had left his stomach aching, but pride still kept him from accepting reality. Then he felt a small hand gently touch his arm. When he looked up, he saw a girl about 6 years old, with messy light hair and a worn brown sweater that was too big for her thin frame. "Do you cry because you're hungry too?" Emily asked in a sweet voice that carried a sadness no child should know. Michael froze. How had this little girl uncovered his secret? He quickly wiped his tears with the back of his hand, trying to regain the composure he'd clung to for weeks. "No, it's not that," he replied, his voice thick. "I'm fine." Emily tilted her head, studying his face with big, curious eyes. Then, without a word, she reached into the torn pocket of her tattered jeans and pulled out half a bread roll, visibly stale. "Here," she said, holding it out to him. "Grandma Martha always says sharing food makes the ache go away." The man stared at that piece of bread as if it were the most precious thing in the world. His hands shook so badly he could barely take it. Shame burned in his chest, but hunger was stronger. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, I already ate my half on the way," lied Emily, forcing a smile. Michael took a slow bite, chewing each small piece with a gratitude he'd never known. The taste was far from good, but to him it felt like a feast. Emily sat beside him on the wooden bench in the city park, swinging her little legs that didn't reach the ground. "How did you know?" he asked after a long silence. "My grandma says when someone cries for real, it's because they're hungry for something. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's love," Emily explained with wisdom beyond her years. Michael's chest tightened. When was the last time anyone had cared for him like this? Ever since his business failed and his wife Jennifer left, taking their 2 children, he'd been trapped in a world of loneliness and despair with no end in sight. Everything had started crumbling 6 months ago when he discovered his business partner of 15 years, Robert Anderson, had embezzled all the money from their construction company in Riverside. Robert vanished overnight, leaving behind millions in debt and contracts signed in Michael's name. Within weeks, he lost the company, his home, his car, and even the respect of his own family. Jennifer couldn't handle the pressure, the constant calls from creditors, the neighbors whispering in the building hallways, the humiliation of explaining to their children why they couldn't go to the club on Saturdays anymore. She packed her bags on a grey Tuesday afternoon and moved in with her mother in the countryside, taking 12-year-old Jason and 9-year-old Sarah with her. "I can't do this anymore, Michael," she'd said, tears streaming down her face. "You have to pick yourself up alone. Maybe when you do, we can talk." Since then, Michael had been living in a cheap boarding house downtown, scraping by on the last few dollars he could borrow here and there. He kept his only suit clean and pressed, leaving every morning as if going to work. But in truth, he wandered the streets searching for opportunities that never came. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. "What's your name?" asked Emily, pulling Michael out of his painful thoughts. "Michael. And yours?" "Emily. I live over there," she said, pointing to a cluster of wooden and tarp-covered shacks on the other side of the square. "With Grandma Martha. She's sick, so I come here every day to look for something to eat." Michael felt his heart tighten. That girl was in the same situation as him, but unlike him, she had no pride to protect. She simply did what needed to be done to survive. "Is your grandma very sick?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "She coughs a lot and sometimes gets really high fevers. She says it's just a cold, but I can see she's getting weaker. Sometimes she can't even get out of bed." Emily spoke softly, as if sharing a very important secret. They sat there in silence for a few more minutes, watching people hurry through the park. Michael noticed how Emily waved at some passers-by, clearly already known in the area. Some stopped to chat briefly with her, while others just looked away. "Do you come here every day?" Michael asked. "Every day since Grandma got worse," Before she used to come with me, but now she can't walk this far, Emily replied, playing with a little clay rooster she pulled from her pocket. This is Benny. Grandma made him for me last year when she was still doing well. The rooster was painted in bright colors, though the paint was already peeling in places. It was clearly made with love and care, and Michael could imagine Emily's grandmother working on it tenderly. Did your grandma do pottery? She used to. She had a small workshop at home and sold her pieces at the Sunday market. Everything was so beautiful. But then she got sick and couldn't make anything anymore. Emily sighed. That's why I have to come here. Michael felt a pang of recognition. He too had once had a productive life, building things, providing jobs, contributing to society. And now, here he was, relying on the kindness of a child to avoid going hungry. Emily, can I ask you something? He said after a while. Sure. Why did you share your bread with me? You don't even know me. The girl stopped swinging her legs and looked straight at him with those clear eyes that seemed to see beyond the surface of things. My grandma always says that when we see someone suffering, we have two choices. Either pretend we didn't see it or help. She says pretending doesn't make the suffering go away. It just makes us sadder inside. Those words hit Michael like a punch to the gut. How many times had he walked past people in need on the street and simply looked away? How many times had he hidden behind the excuse of being too busy to care about others' problems? The sun was beginning to set when Emily stood up from the bench. I need to go home. Grandma worries when it gets dark, she said, tucking the little rooster back into her pocket. Emily, wait, Michael called. I wanted to thank you. You saved my life today. The girl smiled, and for the first time since meeting her, Michael saw a genuine spark of happiness in her eyes. See you tomorrow? She asked. If you want, he replied, surprising himself with his own answer. I do. Bye, Michael. Michael stayed seated on the bench, watching Emily walk away with small but determined steps. For the first time in months, he felt something other than despair in his chest. It wasn't exactly hope, but it was possibility. That night, in his cramped room at the boarding house, Michael thought a lot about his encounter with Emily. The girl had touched something inside him that had been asleep for a long time, the desire to be useful, to make a difference in someone's life. He had spent so much time focused on his own losses that he had completely forgotten there were still things he could give to the world. The next morning, Michael woke up earlier than usual. He took a cold shower, carefully put on his dark grey suit and headed to the park. Emily hadn't arrived yet, so he waited on the same bench as yesterday, watching the morning bustle of the city. When she appeared around 9 o'clock, Michael noticed she looked different. Her eyes were red, and she was walking slower than usual. Emily, is everything all right? He asked as soon as she approached. Grandma Martha coughed all night. She has a high fever and couldn't even drink water, Emily replied, trying not to cry. Michael felt an urgent need to help, but also the painful awareness of his own helplessness. He had no money for medicine, no medical knowledge, not even a decent place where he could take Emily and her grandmother. Have you tried taking her to a clinic? He asked. Yes, but there's always a huge line, and when it's our turn, they say it's nothing serious and send us home with weak medicine that doesn't help at all. Emily sat heavily on the bench. I think they don't like us because we're poor. That remark stung Michael. He knew it was true. There was a huge difference in how people were treated, depending on their appearance and social status. When he still had money and status, he had never faced long waits or neglect. Now, even dressed in his suit, he felt the judgmental stares of others. Emily, do you have any relatives who could help? No. My parents left when I was a baby. Grandma never talks about them, but sometimes I hear her crying when she thinks I'm asleep. Emily wiped her nose on the sleeve of her brown sweater. It's just me and her in the whole world. Michael's chest tightened. This girl was carrying a weight that even many adults couldn't bear. And yet, she had found the strength to comfort him yesterday. Do you know how to read and write? He asked, trying to shift the subject slightly. A little. Grandma taught me, but not very well. She says when she gets better, she'll put me in school, but... Emily didn't finish the sentence. But what? But the other kids in the neighborhood go to school and they say the teachers are mean and yell at anyone who doesn't get things right. Michael had an idea. It wasn't much, but it was something he could offer. Emily, how about I teach you a few things? While your grandma is resting, I can help you with letters and numbers. The girl's eyes lit up. You'd do that? Of course. I was a businessman before. Before ending up here, I know a lot about many things. But you don't really know me. Why do you want to help? The question was fair. Michael paused to think of an answer. Because yesterday you helped me when I needed it, and because it's been a long time since I've done anything useful for anyone. Emily smiled, and Michael felt something warm in his chest. It had been months since anyone had smiled at him like that. They spent the whole morning together. Michael drew letters in the dirt with a stick, taught Emily how to add using pebbles they gathered in the park, and told stories about his school days. The girl was incredibly smart, absorbing every bit of information with a hunger that went far beyond the need for food. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Around noon, Emily said she needed to go home to take care of her grandmother. Michael offered to walk with her, but she hesitated. Grandma is very wary of strangers. She might not like it, Emily explained. I understand. So, I'll see you tomorrow. See you then. Michael spent the rest of the day thinking about Emily and her grandmother. Their situation troubled him deeply, but he felt completely powerless. How could he help someone when he himself needed help? That night, something changed in Michael. For the first time in months, he had a reason to wake up the next day that wasn't just survival. He had someone waiting for him, someone who believed he had something valuable to offer. Over the following days, Michael and Emily met religiously at the park. Their improvised lessons grew more elaborate. Michael began tearing pages from old newspapers he found in the trash to create writing exercises. He taught Emily multiplication using bottle caps they collected together. The girl was an extraordinary student. She paid attention to every word, asked smart questions, and practiced everything she learned with a dedication that touched Michael's heart deeply. He started remembering how rewarding it was to watch someone grow and develop. But Emily's grandmother's condition was worsening. Each day the girl arrived at the park more worried, saying the fever wouldn't break and the cough was getting worse. She barely eats anything, Emily told him one rainy Thursday as they took shelter under a nearby awning. She says she's not hungry, but I know she's lying, so there's more food for me. A helpless anger swelled in Michael's chest. It wasn't fair that good people like Emily and her grandmother had to suffer so much while men like Robert Anderson, his former business partner, were probably living comfortably somewhere with the money they'd stolen. Emily, I want to meet your grandmother, he said suddenly. But I already told you I know she's wary. But maybe if you explain that I'm your teacher, that I'm helping you learn things. Emily thought for a moment. Maybe. She always says education is important, but you have to promise not to get upset if she's rude to you. I promise. The next day, Michael took extra care with his dark grey suit. He wanted to make a good impression on Emily's grandmother. They walked together to the slum where Emily lived, a cluster of simple homes made of wood, plywood and tarp. The shack where Emily lived with her grandmother was small but tidy. Curtains made from fabric scraps hung in the windows, and the floor was swept clean. In the corner, on a single bed covered with a colorful crocheted blanket, lay Grandma Martha. Michael was shocked by the woman's appearance. She was probably in her mid-60s but looked much older. Her grey hair was disheveled, her face pale, and he could hear her labored breathing even from a distance. Grandma, this is Michael. The teacher I told you about, Emily said, pulling Michael by the hand. Grandma Martha struggled to sit up in bed, her eyes studying Michael with suspicion. Good afternoon, ma'am, Michael said, tipping an imaginary hat in respect. Emily has told me a lot about you. And what exactly did she say? Grandma Martha asked, her voice hoarse but firm. That you're a very talented artist, that you made the beautiful little rooster she always carries, and that you taught her everything she knows about kindness and generosity. Grandma Martha seemed to soften slightly at those words. Emily says you've been teaching her things. I've been trying. She's very smart, picks everything up quickly. And why would a well-dressed man like you want to waste time teaching a poor girl? The question was direct, and Michael realized he needed to be just as straightforward in his reply. Because your granddaughter saved my life, Grandma Martha. I was in a very dark place, and she helped me when I needed it most. Teaching her is the only way I can repay her. Grandma Martha coughed violently, and Michael saw droplets of blood on the cloth she used to cover her mouth. This was no ordinary cold. "Ma'am, you should go to a hospital," said Michael, unable to hide his concern. "With what money?" Grandma Martha replied with a bitter smile. "Besides, I've been to several clinics. They all say it's just a bad flu." Michael knew it wasn't the flu. He wasn't a doctor, but he'd seen similar symptoms before. A friend's mother had tuberculosis years ago, and the signs were nearly identical. "Grandma Martha, can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead." "Do you have any savings? Anything of value you could sell?" The woman laughed sadly. "If I did, do you think we'd be living like this? I sold everything of value when Emily was little, even my sewing machine and my ceramic molds." Michael felt desperation tightening in his chest. He wanted to help, but how? He had nothing himself. His credit cards were frozen, his bank account had been empty for months, and the only thing of value he owned was the suit he was wearing. "Grandma, Michael taught me to write my full name without missing a single letter," Emily said, trying to lighten the mood. "Really?" Grandma Martha smiled for the first time since Michael had arrived. "Show me." Emily picked up a worn pencil and a scrap of brown paper, carefully writing, "Emily Collins White." The letters were a little crooked, but perfectly legible. "My God," Grandma Martha whispered, tears beginning to roll down her face. "I tried teaching her so many times, but I could never make her understand." "She's very bright," Michael said. "With a little more time, she'll be reading whole books." Grandma Martha looked at Michael with a new expression. The suspicion had given way to something like gratitude. "Michael, may I speak with you alone?" Emily went outside to play while Michael sat in a plastic chair beside Grandma Martha's bed. "I'm not going to get better," she said bluntly. "I know it, and so do you." Michael didn't know how to respond. "My biggest worry is what will happen to Emily when I'm gone. She has no one in this world but me." "Grandma Martha, don't talk like that. You just need proper treatment." "Stop lying to me," she interrupted. "I may not be educated, but I'm not a fool. I know when my body's giving up." Michael felt tears burning his eyes. There was something devastatingly honest in how this woman faced her own fate. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to promise you'll take care of Emily, that you'll keep teaching her, that you'll give her a chance to be someone in life." "Grandma Martha, I can barely take care of myself. I'm living in a boarding house. I don't have a job, I don't have money. But you have an education. You have knowledge. That's what Emily needs." Michael was silent for a long moment. How could he promise such a thing? How could he take responsibility for a child when his own life was in shambles? "I know it's a lot to ask," Grandma Martha continued, "but I see how Emily looks at you. There's a light in her eyes that wasn't there before. You've given her hope. And what if I fail? What if I can't give her what she needs? Then at least you'll have tried." "It's more than she would have without you." Michael ran his hand over his face, feeling the enormous weight of that responsibility. "I promise I'll do my best," he finally said. Grandma Martha smiled and took his hand. "Thank you." When Michael left the shack that afternoon, his mind was in turmoil. How had he reached this point? 6 months ago, he was worried about million-dollar contracts and meetings with investors. Now he was promising to take care of a girl he barely knew when he himself needed care. But there was something different about his feelings. For the first time since his life had fallen apart, he felt he had a real purpose. It wasn't about money or status. It was about making a difference in the life of someone who truly needed it. In the following days, Michael doubled his efforts in Emily's lessons. He began searching for discarded materials that could be useful for teaching. He found old books at a bookstore that was closing, picked up broken pencils a school was throwing away, and even managed to get some blank sheets of paper from a kind employee at City Hall. Emily absorbed everything with a thirst for knowledge that amazed Michael. In just 2 weeks, she was already reading full sentences and doing division problems. But with each passing day, the news about Grandma Martha's health grew worse. "She's barely getting out of bed anymore," Emily told him one Monday morning, and yesterday she fainted when she tried to get up to go to the bathroom. Michael knew they couldn't wait any longer. Grandma Martha needed medical help immediately, and he had to find a way to make that happen. "Emily, do you trust me?" "Of course I do." "Then I need you to do something very important. I want you to stay here in the park with these books and practice reading. I'll be gone for a few hours, but I'll be back before evening." "Where are you going?" "I'm going to try to get help for your grandma." Michael left the park with a determination he hadn't felt in months. He knew exactly where he needed to go, even if it meant swallowing all his pride. The office of his old construction company was in a commercial building in downtown Riverside. He hesitated at the entrance, seeing from the sign that an accounting firm now operated there. But he knew some of his former employees had found jobs at other construction companies in the area. After making a few calls from a payphone, Michael got the address of Anthony Miller, who had been his chief engineer for nearly 10 years. The man now worked at a smaller company, but still in the same field. When Michael showed up at the reception of Anthony's new company, there was a moment of mutual discomfort. Anthony clearly didn't know how to react to seeing his former boss in such dire straits. "Michael, what a surprise," Anthony said, approaching cautiously. "How are you?" "Hi, Anthony. I know it's strange for me to show up like this, but I need to ask you a favor." Anthony glanced around nervously, clearly uneasy. "Let's talk outside," he said. Outside the building, Michael told Anthony about Emily and Grandma Martha. He explained the woman's medical condition and his desperation at not being able to get her proper care. "I'm not asking for money for myself, Anthony. It's for a child who has no one else in the world." Anthony seemed genuinely moved by the story, but also clearly uncomfortable. "Michael, you know I'd like to help, but I have my own responsibilities. And honestly, after everything that happened with the company, people are afraid to get involved." "Afraid of what?" "That legal trouble might still come up. Who knows? Robert left so many loose ends that no one wants to take risks." Michael felt anger rising in his throat. "Anthony, you worked with me for 10 years. You know what kind of person I am. I would never do anything dishonest." "I know, Michael, but you understand how things got complicated." Michael realized there was no point in insisting. Anthony wouldn't help, not out of malice, but out of fear and self-preservation. "All right, Anthony, I understand." Michael spent the rest of the day visiting other old acquaintances. They all reacted the same way: awkwardness, discomfort, and polite but firm refusals. Some wouldn't even talk to him. By late afternoon, he returned to the city park, completely defeated. Emily was exactly where he had left her, reading aloud from a children's storybook he had found for her. "How did it go?" she asked, looking up from the book. Michael couldn't bring himself to tell the truth. "Still trying," he said. "Grandma Martha slept all day. I think she's really tired." Despair washed over him. He had failed. He had promised Mrs. Thompson he would take care of Emily, but how could he do that if he couldn't even help when they needed him most? That night, Michael barely slept. He lay on the narrow bed in the boarding house, staring at the ceiling, feeling utterly useless. He had hit rock bottom before, or so he thought, but apparently there was always another layer of humiliation waiting for him. The next day, Michael arrived at the park earlier than usual. Emily was already there, but something was different about her posture. She seemed smaller, more fragile. "Emily, what happened?" "Grandma. She couldn't get up this morning. She has a high fever and is saying strange things." Panic gripped him. "What kind of strange things?" "She kept calling me by my parents' names, saying they had come back. Then she started crying, saying she had to finish a pottery piece before dark." Those were fever-induced delusions. Mrs. Thompson was seriously ill, and there was no more time for hesitation or failed attempts to get help from acquaintances. "Emily, we're taking your grandma to the hospital now." "But how? She can't walk, and we don't have money for an ambulance." Michael thought fast. There was only one thing of value he still owned. "Wait here. I'll be back in an hour." He ran to the boarding house and grabbed his dark grey suit, the only decent piece of clothing he had left. He took it to a pawn shop downtown. "How much will you give me for this suit?" he asked the man behind the counter. The man examined the fabric and the label. "It's a good piece. I can give you $200. It wasn't much, but maybe enough for a taxi to the hospital and some leftover for medicine. Deal. When Michael returned to the park, wearing only an old pair of jeans and a t-shirt he had dug out from the back of his closet, Emily looked confused. "Where's your nice suit?" "I sold it. Now we have money to take your grandma to the hospital." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You did that for Grandma?" "I did it because you both matter to me." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now back to the story. They rushed to Emily's shack. Mrs. Thompson was as pale as paper, breathing heavily, slipping in and out of consciousness between feverish ramblings. Michael carefully picked her up and carried her to the street, where he managed to hail a taxi. The driver hesitated when he saw the situation, but Michael showed him the money, and he agreed to take them to the nearest emergency room. At the hospital, Michael faced the first hurdle. The receptionist wanted to know his relation to the patient. I'm a family friend," he said. "A friend can't authorize hospitalization. It has to be a relative." Michael looked at Emily, who was clutching his hand, her eyes wide with fear. "I'm her father," he said, pointing to Emily, "and this is my mother-in-law." The lie came out naturally, and Michael was surprised at how easily he'd said it. But in that moment, there was no time for moral hesitation. Grandma Martha was immediately taken to an emergency room. Michael and Emily stayed in the waiting area, her huddled beside him, trembling not just from cold, but from fear. "Is she going to be okay?" Emily asked. "The doctors will take good care of her," Michael replied, trying to project a confidence he didn't feel. After 2 hours of waiting, a doctor approached them. "Mr. Johnson," he called. Michael stood up, holding Emily's hand. "The patient has a severe case of bacterial pneumonia. We've started antibiotic treatment, but she'll need to stay hospitalized for at least a week." "Will she recover?" Michael asked. "If she responds well to treatment, yes. But it was close. If you'd waited another day to bring her in, it might have been too late." Michael felt his legs weaken. They'd made it just in time. "Can I see her?" Emily asked. "For a few minutes. She's sedated, but she can hear you." In the room where Grandma Martha was being treated, Michael was struck by the number of machines connected to her. She had an IV in her arm, an oxygen tube in her nose, and several monitors beeping softly. Emily approached the bed and took her grandmother's hand. "Grandma, it's me. Michael brought you to the hospital. The doctors said you're going to be okay." Grandma Martha slowly opened her eyes. When she saw Michael there, she tried to smile. "Thank you," she whispered weakly. "You don't have to thank me. Just focus on getting better. Take care of Emily." "I will. I promise." Grandma Martha closed her eyes again, looking more at ease. When they left the hospital, it was already night. Michael had spent nearly all the money from the dark grey suit on the taxi and some hospital expenses. Only enough was left to buy Emily a snack. "Let's get something to eat," he said, pointing to a nearby diner. "What about you?" Emily asked. "I'm not hungry," Michael lied. Emily ordered a sandwich and a soda. Michael just had coffee. While she ate, he thought about what they would do next. With Grandma Martha in the hospital, Emily couldn't stay alone in the shack. But Michael also couldn't take her to the boarding house where he lived. "Michael, can I ask you something?" Emily said, interrupting his thoughts. "Of course. Why did you tell the doctor you're my dad?" Michael paused to think of an answer. That was a more complicated question than it seemed. Because sometimes when you care about someone a lot, they become part of your family, even if you're not related by blood. "And you care about me?" "Very much, Emily. You and your grandma have become the most important people in my life." Emily smiled, and Michael felt his heart warm. No matter how hard things were, he'd find a way to protect this child. "Emily, would you like to stay with me for a few days? Until your grandma gets out of the hospital? You'd let me? Of course, we're family now, remember? That night, Michael managed to convince Mr. Jenkins, the owner of the boarding house, to let Emily stay in the room for a few days. The man resisted at first, but eventually agreed when Michael promised to pay an extra fee as soon as he got some money. The room was too small for 2 people, but they made it work. Emily slept on the bed, and Michael made an improvised mattress on the floor with blankets. For the first time in months, Michael slept deeply, knowing there was someone there who depended on him and trusted him. Over the following days, as Grandma Martha recovered in the hospital, Michael and Emily settled into a routine. In the morning, they visited the hospital for a few minutes. In the afternoon, they went to the park where Michael continued teaching Emily. At night, they returned to the boarding house where Michael told her stories until she fell asleep. Each day, Grandma Martha visibly improved. Color returned to her face, her breathing eased, and she could stay awake for longer periods. But Michael noticed the experience had left her even more physically fragile. "How are you two doing?" she asked one Thursday afternoon. "We're fine, Grandma. Michael's been taking good care of me," Emily replied. "And you, Michael? How are you feeling through all this?" It was an interesting question. Michael paused to think about how he truly felt. "Grandma Martha, I'll be honest with you. These have been the hardest days of my life, but also the most important. Taking care of Emily has reminded me of who I really am." "And who is that?" "I'm someone who enjoys helping people grow. I'm someone who finds meaning in making a difference in others' lives." Grandma Martha smiled. "I knew I wasn't wrong about you." On Saturday, Grandma Martha was discharged from the hospital. Michael spent what little money he had left on another taxi to take them home. The shack seemed smaller and more fragile than he remembered, but it was their home. "Michael, I need to talk to you," Grandma Martha said after Emily went out to play with some neighborhood kids. "Of course." "I'm better now, but I know I don't have much time left. The illness has weakened me, and I'm not young anymore." "Grandma Martha, let me finish. I want to make you an offer. I'd like you to come live here with us." Michael was surprised. "Here? I know it's simple, but it's better than a boarding house. And Emily needs stability. She's grown used to you, Michael. It would be hard for her if you left now." Michael looked around the small space. There was only one room, with a divider separating the 2 beds from the rest of the house. There was no indoor bathroom, no hot water, none of the comforts he'd always taken for granted. But there was something here his old luxurious home had never had. There was love, there was purpose, there was a sense that every person there truly mattered to the others. "I accept," he said. "Are you sure? It won't be easy. Life here is very different from what you're used to." "Grandma Martha, my old life is over, and honestly I don't miss it. Here, I have things money can't buy." "What things?" "I have you two, and you have me. It's more than I've had in months." That weekend, Michael moved his few belongings into Emily and Grandma Martha's shack. He improvised a bed in a small, somewhat separated area and organized his books and teaching materials on a shelf made of wooden crates. The neighborhood watched curiously as the well-dressed man, even without the suit Michael still stood out in the community, settled in. But Emily made sure to tell everyone he was her teacher and there to help. Little by little, other children from the slum became interested in the lessons Michael gave Emily. First came little Jimmy, an 8-year-old boy who lived 2 houses down. Then came Lily Grace, who was 9. Within a few weeks, Michael had a group of 7 children coming every afternoon to learn from him. At first, the parents were suspicious. Why would a stranger want to teach their children for free? But Grandma Martha, who was respected in the community, vouched for Michael. "He's a good man," she told anyone who asked. "And he's doing beautiful work with the children." It was true. Michael discovered he had a natural talent for teaching. He could explain difficult concepts in simple ways, kept the children engaged with educational games and activities, and had endless patience for each child's struggles. The lessons took place in a covered area Michael had improvised between the houses, using a large tarp and some pieces of wood. It wasn't much, but it worked. The children sat on crates or the ground, used old books Michael had gotten through donations, and wrote on sheets of paper he tore from discarded notebooks. But what mattered most were the results. Within just 2 months, every child attending Michael's lessons was reading fluently and doing basic math. For a community where many children reached 10 years old without even knowing how to write their own names, this was a revolution. The families began noticing changes in their children. They came home excited, talking about what they'd learned. They asked smart questions, showed curiosity about the world beyond the slum, and had a spark in their eyes that hadn't been there before. "My daughter came home yesterday asking about the planets," said Mrs. Thompson, Lily Grace's mother, to Grandma Martha. "She wants to know if it's possible to visit the moon someday. And little Jimmy is doing math in his head to help me at the grocery store," said Mr. Wilson. "I've never seen him so sharp." Michael felt deep satisfaction seeing the children's progress. It was a completely different feeling from what he'd experienced in the business world. There, success was measured in abstract numbers: profit, revenue, market share. Here, success had faces, names, and stories. But not everything was easy. Michael faced constant challenges. He didn't have proper materials, didn't have a suitable space for lessons, and sometimes went days without eating properly to save money for the children's school supplies. Grandma Martha, though recovered from pneumonia, remained frail. There were days she couldn't get out of bed, and Michael could tell she was struggling with health issues more serious than she admitted. "Grandma Martha, you should go back to the doctor," he said one morning when he found her coughing up blood again. "For what? So they can tell me I need expensive medicine I can't afford?" she replied with a sad smile. "But if you don't take care of yourself—" "Michael, I'm 63 and I've lived longer than many in my generation. My worry now isn't for me, it's for Emily and her future. You can't give up. Emily needs you. Emily has you now, and you're doing far more for her than I ever could." Michael felt the weight of that responsibility. He truly had become the main father figure in Emily's life, and the girl depended on him not just for education, but for emotional security. One afternoon, while Michael was teaching the group of children, a well-dressed woman appeared watching the lesson from a distance. Michael noticed her but continued teaching as usual. After the children left, the woman approached. "Good afternoon. My name is Professor Diane and I work at the City Department of Education. May I speak with you?" Michael's stomach tightened. Was he doing something illegal by teaching the children without formal permission? "Of course. How can I help you?" "We've received several calls from parents in this community about the work you're doing here. I came to see for myself." "And what did you think?" "Impressive. These children are learning at a pace I've never seen in formal schools. How do you do it?" Michael thought about his answer. "I think it's because they genuinely want to learn, and because I genuinely want to teach." "Do you have any formal teaching training?" "Not formally, but I have a college degree and a strong desire to make a difference." Professor Diane smiled. "I'll be direct with you. We're developing a pilot project for community education. It's a program that brings quality education to underserved neighborhoods using local teachers. I'd like to know if you're interested in participating." Michael Johnson couldn't believe what he was hearing. "How would it work?" "You'd receive formal teaching training, proper educational materials, and a basic salary to oversee the children's education in this community. It would be an official community school, recognized by City Hall." "And could I keep living here?" "Not only could you, but it would be preferable. The project works best when the educator is truly part of the community." Michael felt tears burning his eyes. For the first time in nearly a year, someone was offering him not just a job, but the chance to formalize what he loved doing most. "I accept," he said without hesitation. "Great. We'll start with the paperwork next week." When Professor Diane left, Michael rushed home to share the news with Grandma Martha and Emily. "Grandma, Grandma!" Emily shouted as soon as he told them. "Michael's going to be a real teacher." "He already was a real teacher," Grandma Martha replied, smiling. "Now he just has the papers to prove it." That night, for the first time since his company had gone under, Michael felt truly happy. He had found not just a new purpose, but a new family and a new way to be useful in the world. But life, as Michael was learning, rarely lets happiness last long without new challenges. A week later, while organizing documents for the city project, he received an unexpected visitor. Robert Anderson, his former business partner, showed up in the slum. Michael was teaching when he saw the man approaching. Robert was tanned, well-dressed, clearly living well. The contrast with Michael's situation was stark. "Michael, we need to talk," Robert said without preamble. Michael told the children to come back the next day and prepared for the confrontation he'd been putting off for nearly a year. "What do you want here, Robert?" "I came to make you an offer. I'm not interested in anything you have to offer. At least hear me out. I know you're struggling." "You know because you caused it," Michael interrupted, feeling the old anger return. "Look, I admit things got out of hand, but I was just protecting my interests. You'd have done the same." "No, Robert, I would never steal from a partner and leave them with debts that weren't theirs." All right, let's forget the past. I'm here because I want to give you a chance to start over." Michael was immediately suspicious. "What kind of chance?" "I'm setting up a new company out of town. I need someone I can trust as a partner, someone who knows the business and has experience." "Are you crazy? After everything that happened?" "Michael, look at your situation. You're living in a slum, teaching poor kids. Is this any life for a man like you?" Michael glanced around at the community where he now lived. The modest homes, the children playing in the street, the people who greeted him with genuine warmth. "This is the best life I've ever had," he said. Robert laughed unpleasantly. "You're trying to convince yourself of that to feel better. But I've known you for 15 years, Michael. I know you miss what you had before. You don't know me. If you did, you'd never have done what you did. Listen, I'm offering you a chance to go back to who you always were. Nice cars, beautiful homes, expensive restaurants. You're not going to stay here forever playing teacher." Emily came running from one of the neighboring houses, but stopped when she saw the tense conversation between Michael and the strange man. "Michael, is everything okay?" she asked, approaching cautiously. "Yes, Emily. This gentleman was just leaving." Robert looked at Emily with a disdainful expression that didn't escape Michael's notice. "Is this the girl you're raising? This is Emily, and she's none of your business." "Michael, think carefully about what you're doing. You have responsibilities now. How are you going to support a child earning peanuts as a community teacher?" "I'll make it work. Or you could accept my offer and give her everything she deserves. Private school, health insurance, all the opportunities a child should have." Michael felt doubt creeping into his mind. It was true he couldn't give Emily the luxuries a middle-class child would have. Was he being selfish by keeping her in a simple life when he could provide more? "Daddy Michael, you're not leaving, are you?" Emily asked, taking his hand. Hearing her call him Daddy hit Michael like a punch to the chest. He realized this child truly saw him as a father, and he felt genuine paternal love for her. "I'm not leaving, Emily. I'll never leave." "Are you sure?" Robert pressed. "Think about the child. She deserves more than this." Michael looked at Emily, who watched him with absolute trust in her eyes. Then he looked at Robert, who represented everything he had once been. Ambitious, focused only on money, willing to step on anyone to get what he wanted. "Emily has everything she needs," Michael said firmly. "She has love, education, a community that cares about her, and a future full of possibilities. That's more than money can buy." "You'll regret this decision," Robert said. "The only thing I regret is ever trusting you." Robert shrugged and walked away. Michael stood there, watching the man who had once been his partner leave for good. And for the first time he felt no anger or resentment, only pity. "Michael, who was that man?" Emily asked. "Someone from my past. Someone who doesn't understand what really matters in life. And what really matters." Michael crouched down to her level and held her small hands. "People who truly love each other, people who take care of one another, people who make the world a better place just by being in it." Emily smiled and hugged Michael tightly. "I love you, Daddy Michael." "I love you too, sweetheart." That night, Michael talked at length with Grandma Martha about Robert's visit and the offer he'd made. "Did you consider his offer?" she asked. "For a moment, yes. I thought maybe I could give Emily more if I had more money." "And now?" Now I know Emily already has everything she needs, and so do I. Grandma Martha smiled. You've changed a lot since you first came here. For the better? Definitely for the better. The man I met that first day was lost, without purpose. Now you know exactly who you are and what you want. And what do I want? You want to be a good father to Emily, a good teacher for the community's children, and a person who makes a difference in the world. Those are beautiful goals. Michael agreed. That was exactly what he wanted. The following months brought significant changes. The City Hall project was formalized, and Michael received formal teaching training. The community school got its own space, a large room built by the community itself, with materials donated by local businesses. The number of children enrolled grew to 25, including some from neighboring areas. Michael hired an assistant, Professor Karen, a young woman freshly graduated in education, who was enchanted by the project. Emily remained his most dedicated student, but now also helped with the younger children. She had become a sort of mentor, assisting Michael in organizing materials and explaining exercises to classmates who struggled more. Grandma Martha, despite her health issues, had found the strength to start making pottery pieces again. Michael organized a small monthly fair in the community where she and other local artisans could sell their work. The extra income helped with household expenses and gave Grandma Martha a sense of purpose she had lost during her illness. But Michael's happiness was shaken one Thursday morning when he woke up and found Grandma Martha collapsed on the kitchen floor. She had fainted during the night and couldn't get up. "Grandma Martha!" Michael shouted, rushing to help her. I'm fine," she murmured, trying to stand. But Michael could see she wasn't fine. Her face was pale, her hands trembled, and she seemed confused. "Emily, go get Professor Karen to take care of the school today. We're taking your grandmother to the doctor." At the hospital, the diagnosis was devastating. Grandma Martha had advanced lung cancer. The doctors explained that the pneumonia months earlier had only been a symptom of a much bigger problem. "How long?" Michael asked the doctor, while Emily was distracted with a magazine in the waiting room. "Hard to say. Maybe a few months if she responds well to palliative care." Michael felt the world crumble around him. How would he tell Emily? How could he prepare a 6-year-old to lose the only family she had ever known? Is there anything we can do? Any treatment? Unfortunately, the cancer is too advanced. At this stage, our goal is to maintain her quality of life and manage the pain. On the way home, Michael fought back tears. Grandma Martha was quiet, clearly aware the news wasn't good, even if the doctors hadn't been completely direct with her. "Michael," she said once they got home and Emily went outside to play. "I saw the doctor's expression. I know what's happening." "Grandma Martha." "No need to lie to me. How long?" Michael hesitated but decided to be honest. "A few months." Grandma Martha nodded as if she had expected that answer. "Then we need to get things in order. There are some things I need to do before I go." "What things?" "First, I need to make sure Emily is legally protected when I'm gone. I want you to officially adopt her." Michael was stunned. "Adopt her? Can I do that?" "With the right paperwork, yes. I'll find a lawyer and see how we can arrange it." "Grandma Martha, I'd love to be Emily's legal father, but are you sure you want to trust her to me?" "Michael, look at everything you've done for us. You gave up your old life to care for a child who wasn't even your responsibility. You're the most honorable man I know." Tears streamed down Michael's face. "I promise I'll take care of her as if she were my own flesh and blood." "I know you will." The following weeks were intense. Grandma Martha, with the help of a lawyer recommended by the City Hall's social worker, began the process of transferring Emily's custody to Michael. She also made sure to organize her few belongings, setting aside some pottery pieces she wanted Emily to keep as mementos. Michael adjusted his classes to spend more time at home caring for Grandma Martha. Professor Karen took on more responsibilities at the school, and the students themselves organized to help when possible. The entire community rallied to support the family. Neighbors brought food, offered help with cleaning the house, and some men even built an access ramp so Grandma Martha could move around more easily on the days she felt better. Emily, though not fully grasping the seriousness of the situation, sensed something important was happening. She became even more affectionate with her grandmother, spending hours by her side, talking about her classes and the progress she was making in reading. "Grandma, when you get better, I'll read you a whole book," Emily said one afternoon as she helped Grandma Martha drink her tea. "I'd love to hear that, sweetheart," Grandma Martha replied, stroking her granddaughter's hair. Michael watched these interactions with a heavy heart. He knew Emily would soon face a devastating loss, and he felt completely unprepared to help her through it. One night, after Emily had fallen asleep, Grandma Martha called Michael over to talk. "I want to give you something," she said, handing him a small wooden box. Inside was a simple gold ring, clearly old. "It belonged to my mother," Grandma Martha explained. "It's the only valuable thing I have left. I want you to keep it to give to Emily when she's older." "Grandma Martha, I can't accept this." "Of course you can. Emily will need something tangible to remember her family, her roots. This ring carries the story of 3 generations of strong women." Michael took the ring carefully. "I'll keep it safe. And there's one more thing. When I'm gone, I want you to tell Emily about her parents. But I thought you never talked about them. I didn't because it hurt too much, but she has the right to know." Grandma Martha told Michael the story Emily had never heard. The girl's parents, Brian and Brittany, were too young when she was born. Brian was only 18, and Brittany was 17. They tried to take responsibility for a few months, but couldn't handle the financial and emotional challenges of raising a baby. "One night, they just left Emily with me and walked away," Grandma Martha said. "They left a note saying they thought she'd be happier with me, that they weren't ready to raise a child." "Did they ever reach out again?" "Never. I heard they moved to another state, but I never knew for sure." "And you never resented them?" "At first I did, but over time I realized they did what they thought was best. Emily is a special girl, and maybe she wouldn't have become who she is if she'd stayed with them." Michael understood why Grandma Martha wanted him to know this. Emily would need to understand, when she grew up, that sometimes people make hard choices out of love, even when those choices are painful. Grandma Martha's condition deteriorated quickly in the following weeks. She spent most of her time bedridden, and Michael hired a nurse to help with her care during the day. Emily noticed her grandmother growing weaker, but Michael still hadn't found the courage to explain what was really happening. One afternoon, while Emily was at the community school, Grandma Martha called Michael for an urgent talk. "I don't think I have much time left," she said with difficulty. "I need to ask you one more thing." "Anything." "When I'm gone, I don't want Emily to feel guilty or responsible. Children sometimes think they did something wrong when someone they love passes away. How can I make sure of that? By explaining to her that the people we love never really leave, that they live on in our hearts, in the good things we learned from them." Michael nodded, even though he knew it would be one of the hardest conversations of his life. "And I want you to promise me one thing. Never let Emily forget she is loved. That she was always loved, from the very first day of her life. I promise." Grandma Martha smiled and closed her eyes. "Thank you for coming into our lives, Michael. You were a gift." "No, Grandma Martha. You two were the gift." That night, Grandma Martha couldn't eat dinner. Michael stayed by her side, holding her hand as she dozed. Emily was playing on the floor, putting together a puzzle Michael had gotten from a donation. "Michael," Grandma Martha called in a whisper. "I'm here. Take care of our girl." "I will." Those were Grandma Martha's last words. She closed her eyes and passed peacefully in the early hours of the morning, while Michael kept watch beside her bed. Michael cried silently for a few minutes, holding the hand of the woman who had become like a mother to him. Then, gently, he arranged her in bed and went to wake Emily. "Emily, sweetheart, I need to talk to you." The little girl stretched and sat up in bed. "What is it, Daddy Michael?" "Grandma Martha left us tonight." Emily looked confused. "Left for where?" Michael took a deep breath, remembering Grandma Martha's words about how to explain it. "She was very sick, honey. Sicker than we could help. And when someone gets very sick and very tired, sometimes their body stops working and they have to go." "But will she come back?" "No, Emily, she won't. But you know what happens? The people we love never really leave us. They stay right here, Michael said, touching Emily's chest over her heart. In everything they taught us, in all the love they shared with us. Emily began to cry, and Michael held her in his arms, letting her pour out all the sadness and confusion she was feeling. I'm going to miss her so much, Emily sobbed. Me too, sweetheart. We'll miss her together. Grandma Martha's wake and funeral were simple but touching. The whole community came to say goodbye to the woman who had been a kind of counselor and friend to many families. The children from the community school made drawings and paper flowers to decorate the casket. Emily stayed very quiet through it all, holding tightly to Michael's hand. He noticed she was trying to be strong, copying the behavior she saw in the adults around her. It's okay to cry, Michael whispered to her during the ceremony. Grandma would understand. Then Emily let herself cry for real, and Michael knew it was healthy and necessary. In the weeks after Grandma Martha's passing, Michael and Emily had to learn how to live as a family of two. It was different, quieter, sometimes sadder, but there was also a new closeness between them, a mutual dependence that strengthened the bond they already had. The official adoption process was finalized 2 months later. Michael remembered the emotion he felt when the judge declared that Emily Collins White was now legally his daughter. Emily, who didn't fully understand all the legal details, was just happy to know it was now official that Michael was her dad. The community school kept growing. The project had become a model for other communities, and Michael started getting invitations to give talks about community education in other cities. But he always turned down long trips, not wanting to be away from Emily for too long. A year after Grandma Martha's passing, Michael and Emily started a tradition. Every Sunday, they visited her grave and shared updates about their week. Emily always brought a new drawing or a story she had written at school. Grandma, I learned how to divide big numbers, Emily said during one visit. And Daddy Michael said you'd be proud. Michael smiled, watching how Emily had found a healthy way to keep her connection to her grandmother's memory alive. She really would, Michael confirmed. She always said you were the smartest child she knew. During this time, Michael also worked to heal his own emotional wounds. He finally managed to forgive Robert Anderson for what had happened, not because his former partner deserved forgiveness, but because Michael realized that holding on to anger and resentment only hurt him. He also tried to reconnect with his own children, Jason and Sarah. Jennifer, his ex-wife, resisted at first, but when she saw that Michael had truly rebuilt his life and even had an adoptive daughter, she began allowing occasional visits. The meetings with Jason and Sarah were awkward at first. They were different now, older, and Michael realized he had missed important moments in their lives. But little by little, they began rebuilding a relationship. Emily was delighted to discover she had older siblings. Jason, now 14, taught her how to play chess. Sarah, 11, enjoyed brushing Emily's hair and telling stories about her school days. Can I call them brother and sister? Emily asked Michael after one of these visits. Of course you can. Family isn't just about blood, it's about love and care. So we have a big family now. We sure do. 2 years after Michael arrived in the slum, the community school had become a regional model. It had 45 students, 3 teachers, and a waiting list of families eager to enroll their children. Michael had become something of a local celebrity. Newspapers wrote about his story, TV shows interviewed him, and he received invitations to speak at education conferences. But he never let fame distract him. To him, what mattered most was the daily life at the school, watching his children learn and grow. Emily, now 8, was in 2nd grade at a regular school, but still attended afternoon classes at the community school. She had become a mentor to the younger kids, helping Michael with activities and serving as proof of how education could change lives. Daddy Michael, can I ask you something? Emily said one evening as they ate dinner. Of course, sweetheart. Do you miss your old life? From when you had a lot of money? Michael paused to think. It was a question he had asked himself before. You know, Emily, I used to think I did, but then I look at you, at our students, at our home, our community, and I realize this life is so much richer than the one I had before. Richer how? rich in purpose, in real love, in the feeling that I'm making a difference in the world. The money I had before bought me things, but it didn't give me real happiness. And now, are you truly happy? Michael looked at Emily, saw the intelligence and kindness shining in her eyes, thought of all the children who now had better opportunities because of the school, and remembered the community that had welcomed him as family. "Now I'm the happiest man in the world," he said, and for the first time in his life it was completely true. Emily smiled and went back to eating, satisfied with his answer. Michael kept watching her, amazed at the extraordinary child she had become and grateful for every event, even the painful ones that had brought them there. That night, after Emily fell asleep, Michael went for a walk through the community, something he often did. He loved seeing the lit-up houses, hearing families chatting, feeling like he belonged. He passed by the park bench where he had first met Emily. It was hard to believe that only 2.5 years had passed since that day when he was at rock bottom, without hope, without direction. He sat on the bench for a few minutes, remembering that afternoon when a little girl had shared half of a stale bread roll with him and, without knowing it, had given him far more than food. She had given him a reason to live. "Thank you," Michael whispered to the wind, not exactly sure who he was thanking, but feeling the need to express his gratitude for the miracle his life had become. When he returned home, he found Emily awake in bed, waiting for him. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "I was thinking about Grandma Martha." Michael sat on the bed beside her. "What were you thinking about her?" "I was thinking she'd be happy to see how our family has grown. How we now have Miguel and Sarah as siblings, how we have so many friends at school, how you became a famous teacher. Do you think she'd be happy?" "I'm sure, because she always said the most important thing was for people to be happy and do good for others." Michael hugged Emily and felt a deep peace fill his heart. "She'd be very proud of you too, Emily, to see how you've grown, how smart and kind you are." "Daddy Michael?" "Yes? I love you so much." "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you can imagine." Emily snuggled into Michael's arms and finally fell asleep. He stayed there a few more minutes, just watching the peaceful face of the girl who had completely changed his life. Michael thought about everything he had lost: the company, the luxurious house, the imported car, the social status, the marriage. And then he thought about everything he had gained: Emily, a community that loved him, work that fulfilled him, inner peace, true purpose. There was no doubt he had made a good trade. 3 years after that first meeting on the park bench, Michael was preparing for a special event: the graduation of the first class from the community school. 12 children who had started without even knowing how to write their own names were now ready to enter middle school. Emily, now 9 years old, would be the class spokesperson, chosen by her peers to give a speech at the ceremony. "Daddy Michael, can you help me with my speech?" she asked, showing him the paper where she had started writing her ideas. "Of course. What do you want to say?" "I want to talk about how education changed our lives, about how you came here and transformed everything." "Emily, education changed your lives, but you also changed mine. That's important to make clear in your speech." "How so?" "Before I met you and Grandma Martha, I was lost. I didn't know who I was or what my purpose was. You taught me that being useful to others is the most important thing a person can do." Emily thought for a moment and then began writing eagerly. On graduation day, the community school was decorated with colorful banners made by the children themselves. Whole families attended, including grandparents, aunts, uncles, and neighbors. Even Jennifer came with Jason and Sarah to watch Emily speak. When it was time for the speech, Emily stepped onto the small makeshift stage with a confidence that amazed Michael. She no longer seemed like the shy little girl he had met years ago. "Good morning, everyone," Emily began, her voice clear and strong. "My name is Emily, and I want to tell you a story about a day that changed many lives." Michael's heart raced. He didn't know exactly what Emily had prepared. 3 years ago, there was a very sad man sitting on a bench in the park. He was crying because he had lost everything he thought was important: his job, his home, his money. And there was also a very small girl who was hungry, looking for something to eat. Emily paused and searched for Michael in the audience. The girl asked the man if he was crying because he was hungry too, and when she saw that he was, she shared with him the only food she had. Michael felt tears begin to stream down his face. Several people in the audience were visibly moved as well. But what happened next was magical. The man realized he could teach the girl things, and the girl realized she had found a father, and when they started helping each other, other children saw and wanted to learn too. Emily gestured to her classmates, who were seated in the front row. Today our school has almost 50 students. We all know how to read, write, and do math. But more importantly, we all know we matter, that we can be whatever we want to be when we grow up. The audience applauded enthusiastically. The man on the bench became my father, Professor Michael. The hungry girl became me, and all of you became our family. This is a story about how sharing a piece of bread can change the world. Emily stepped off the stage to a standing ovation. Michael hugged her tightly, too proud to speak. "Was it a good speech?" she asked. "It was the best speech I've ever heard in my life," Michael replied. After the ceremony, families gathered for a community lunch. Michael watched the children playing, the parents chatting animatedly, the sense of community and togetherness that had been built there. Anthony Miller, his former employee, approached him. "Michael, can I talk to you?" Michael was surprised to see Anthony there. "Of course, I didn't know you knew anyone in the community." "I don't. I came specifically to speak with you." They stepped slightly away from the group. "I want to apologize," Anthony said. "For how I acted when you came to me asking for help. I was a coward." "Anthony, that was years ago. It's forgotten." "It's not forgotten for me. And I want to do something to make it right." Anthony explained that his company had been hired to build a new city school in the area. He wanted to offer Michael the opportunity to oversee the project with a substantial salary. "It's my way of giving back for everything you've done for these kids, and also a way for me to make up for what I did." Michael was touched by the offer but hesitated. "Anthony, I really appreciate the offer, but my place is here with these children, with this community. You could do both. The project is in this area. You'd still live here, and the extra money could help expand the community school." Michael considered the proposal. It was true that additional resources could make a big difference for the school. "Let me talk to Emily and think about it." "Of course. But Michael." "Yes?" "I wanted you to know you're the most admirable person I know. What you've done here, it's extraordinary." That night, Michael talked to Emily about Anthony's proposal. "Do you want to accept?" she asked. "Only if you agree. We make big decisions together now," Emily thought carefully. "Would it mean more money to help the school?" "It would. And you'd still be my dad and the children's teacher." "I would." "Then I think you should take it. Grandma Martha always said, when an opportunity to do good comes along, we should take it." Michael smiled. Emily was right, as always. "Then I'll accept." In the following months, Michael split his time between managing the new city school project and his work at the community school. The job was demanding, but he felt energized by the chance to further improve education in the area. With the extra salary, Michael was able to hire 2 more teachers for the community school and buy equipment he had long wanted: computers, a small library, science materials. Emily, watching all these changes, remarked one evening, "Daddy Michael, it seems like our life just keeps getting better and better." "That's true. But do you know why?" "Why?" "Because we've learned that true happiness comes from helping others and having people we love close by." "And do we have that?" "More than enough." 5 years after that first meeting on the park bench, Michael was being honored by City Hall as Citizen of the Year for his contributions to community education. The school he had started with 7 children sitting on the floor now served over 100 students and had become a model for the entire state. Emily, now 11, was in 6th grade and remained one of the top students in her class at the regular school, but she never abandoned the community school, where she now helped as a junior tutor. During the award ceremony, Michael was invited to give a speech. He stepped onto the stage of the City Theatre, seeing Emily in the front row, his children, Jason and Sarah, Jennifer, several families from the community, former students of the community school. and even some local political figures. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael began, "5 years ago I was a man who had lost everything I thought was important. I was sitting on a park bench, hopeless, directionless, purposeless." He searched for Emily in the crowd and smiled at her. "That's when a 6-year-old girl came up to me and asked if I was crying because I was hungry. And when she saw that I was, she shared the only food she had, half a stale bread roll." Michael paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "That simple act of kindness from a child didn't just change my life. It changed the lives of hundreds of other children who now have access to a quality education." The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. "I stand here receiving this honor, but the real honoree should be Emily Collins White, the little girl who taught me that generosity is the most powerful force in the world." Michael motioned for Emily to stand, and the entire audience turned to her. "Emily taught me that no matter how little you have, there's always something to share. She taught me that education is the most valuable gift we can give a child. And most importantly, she taught me that family isn't determined by blood, but by love and care." The audience erupted in enthusiastic applause. "I accept this honor not for myself, but on behalf of all the children who dared to dream of a better future, on behalf of all the families who believed in the power of education, and especially on behalf of Grandma Martha Collins White, who passed away 3 years ago, but whose legacy of kindness and wisdom lives on in every child who walks through our school." Michael concluded his speech with tears in his eyes. "If there's one lesson I want to leave you with today, it's this. Never underestimate the power of a small act of kindness. Never underestimate what one determined person can do to transform a community. And never ever underestimate the potential of a child who is given love, education, and opportunity." The ovation was long and emotional. Michael stepped down from the stage and went straight to embrace Emily, who was crying with pride. "Thank you for saving my life," he whispered in her ear. "Thank you for saving mine," Emily replied. After the ceremony, there was a reception where Michael spoke with many of the city's important figures. Everyone wanted to know about his future plans, whether he was interested in expanding the project to other cities, if he'd consider entering politics. Michael thanked them all, but his answer was always the same. His place was there, with his community, with his children, with Emily. "Don't you have bigger ambitions?" asked a local businessman. "I have the greatest ambition possible," Michael replied. "I want to keep making a difference in the lives of the people around me. There's no ambition greater than that." When they got home that night, Emily was too excited to sleep. "Daddy Michael, you were amazing today." Everyone was clapping, everyone saying you're a hero. "Emily, I'm no hero. I'm just a man who was lucky enough to meet special people who taught me what really matters in life. But you've changed so many lives, and you changed mine. Without you, none of this would have happened." Emily curled up on the couch beside Michael. "Daddy Michael, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course. Sometimes I think about that day in the park and wonder, what if I hadn't stopped to talk to you? What if I just walked right past?" Michael had thought about that many times himself. "But you did stop, because you have a kind heart that can't see someone hurting without helping. Do you think Grandma Martha would be happy with everything that's happened?" "Absolutely. She'd be so proud of the incredible woman you're becoming. And she'd be happy to know we built a beautiful, strong family." Emily smiled and snuggled deeper into Michael's arms. "I'm the luckiest kid in the world," she said. "Why's that?" "Because I have the best dad in the universe, a big family who loves me, and a bunch of little siblings at school who look up to me like I'm special." Michael's heart swelled with happiness. "Emily, you are special. You're the most special kid I know. And you're the most special dad there is." They stayed like that, wrapped in each other's arms for a long time, soaking in the perfect peace of the moment. Outside, the community that had become their home was quiet. The modest houses sheltered families sleeping soundly, knowing their children had bright futures ahead. The community school was closed, but tomorrow it would be full again of eager kids ready to learn and grow. Michael looked out the window and saw the city park bench in the distance lit by a street lamp. The bench where it had all begun, where he'd hit rock bottom and found salvation in the form of a little girl with a giant heart. "Emily," he said softly. She murmured, nearly asleep. "Thank you for asking me if I was crying from hunger that day." "Thank you for accepting half my bread roll." Michael smiled and kissed Emily's forehead. "Good night, sweetheart." "Good night, Daddy." And so, in that simple home in a community many would call poor, two hearts that had found each other in deepest need slept in peace, knowing they'd built something far more precious than any material wealth. A family rooted in true love, a community transformed by education, and a legacy of kindness that would keep touching lives for generations. The story that had begun with hunger and tears on a park bench had become one of hope, transformation, and unconditional love. Michael and Emily had proven that sometimes the greatest riches come from the deepest scarcity, and that true abundance isn't measured in possessions, but in the ability to love and be loved, to help and be helped, to change and be changed. In the silence of that peaceful night, the echo of a simple question still lingers. Do you also cry because you're hungry? A question that changed 2 lives and touched hundreds more, proving that a child's kindness can be the seed of extraordinary transformations. End of story. And what about you, dear listener? What did you think of this story of Michael and Emily? Do you believe in the transformative power of education and kindness? Share in the comments which part moved you the most, and if you've ever had a similar experience. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.